and goes through all of them that we have until we're out. So we can do more.
What do you do when you don't have it?
Then we do back to normal lessons until we do a little more than we answer.
Mention those pants.
These are some questions that we're answering.
It does matter. Although maybe just a little bit.
It is. Okay, so guys, today is our second to last questions uncensored. Janelle is going to start out by answering one question. I'm going to answer two of them. We do have room for one or two more questions for next week. If you would like to put in a question in the question box, that would be awesome. Also, next week is parent night. So if you want to bring your parents, they can come participate in hearing questions uncensored. And then they can also, they will have their own small group time, separate from you guys, that I will lead. It'll be super fun. And be able to talk about some of the same stuff that you guys do so that they can kind of get a feel for what goes on here. We'll also be talking about like our beforehand, starting at 5 o'clock for parents, about our schedule for all the way through the end of August. So if they want to know the calendar or a bunch of time in the future, that's where they find out. Yes?
Will there be a print-off calendar?
Yes, I will have a print-off version. Anyways, with that, last thing is, you guys know the Nerf War got canceled. We are talking about possibly rescheduling that and how that's going to look. We'll hopefully let you know by next week. Yeah. Cool? Without further ado, here's Janelle.
Alright, hey guys.
Hi.
Tonight we are going to be starting with this question. What does the Bible say about cussing? Is it a sin if no one is offended? Good question. How many of you guys have ever said something that you regretted in your life?
Oh.
How many of you guys have ever used terms that you regretted in your life? Like not just like the I think this happens. This happens to all of us in various ways. And I'm going to first talk about how it does matter. Like some people want to say, oh, it's just something that you said, it doesn't matter. Like sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. Like that kind of thing. That's not true. That's not in the Bible. It might rhyme, but that doesn't mean that it's true. So I will say the Bible has pretty big warnings in it about how you use your words, and they are very important. So let's just start with these verses. Someone to read this first one, if you guys can see it, Matthew 12:36-37. Go ahead, Matthew.
I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned.
So in this verse, this is Jesus speaking. And he doesn't seem to think that it doesn't matter what you say because words don't hurt people, right? It's kind of significant. He says, on Judgment Day, you're going to have to answer for all the words you've ever spoken in your life. Which we know that there's grace in God, right? There's lots of things. We all said that we all have something that we regret that we've said in the past, probably the multiple things. There is grace for us through Jesus, but it still matters. It's still going to come up on Judgment Day, okay? Next one, who wants to read James 1:26?
If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless.
All right, thank you. So, who knows what bridle means? Does anyone know the word bridle? Nick?
Like to hold back, control.
Yeah, it's a horsemanship term. You put the bit in the mouth of a horse, and you can bridle the horse, and it helps you control the horse, right? It's kind of keeping it under control. So, does that make sense, everybody? Yeah? All right. So, this one's saying that you can deceive yourself and think that you're doing the right thing and be totally off course, right? And he's saying if you don't take care of your language, you don't take care of your speech, that your religion is worthless, which is pretty strong language right there. So I'll just say, to start out, I think this is a good question to say what is okay to say, how can we use our words correctly according to the Bible. I just want to say, the Bible affirms this is an important question. So, all right. In the big picture of what God says about speaking, he shows us that it's actually kind of a bigger deal than just the surface of what you say. It goes deeper into your heart. So this is a longer verse. Is there someone who can read this one for me?
I can do it.
All right, Ben, go for it.
And he called the people to him and said to them, "Hear and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defines a person, what comes out of the mouth. This does it say defines or defiles? Defiles a person. Then the disciples came and said to him, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying?" He answered, "Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone. They are blind guides, and if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit." But Peter said to him, "Explain the parable to us." But he said, "Are you also still without understanding? Do you not see that whoever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled, or whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, and slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone."
Okay, thank you. Who knows what the word defile means in this? Defile, yeah.
Make unclean.
To make unclean. So it's like making you dirty. So what he's saying, Jesus is saying in this, he's saying they were all concerned about following certain rules about how to wash before you eat. And Jesus is saying that's not as important as what comes out of you. So what comes out of you, including your speech, are all these other things that are actually what's dirty, right? So if you eat some dirt on your food with your hands not being clean, that's one kind of dirt, but there's something worse than germs, and that's having like a messed up spirit that is like devising these evil things. But I will say, one thing that this verse brings to mind is that when my words are, for instance, very harsh or unkind or vulgar in some sense, usually there's something going on in my heart that's bringing that out, and I can almost notice that my heart is messed up by observing that my words are messed up. Does that ever happen to anybody else? So I think it's important, regardless of the cuss words or non-cuss words that you're using in your language, if you find yourself and your words are showing that your heart is messed up, pay attention to that and bring that to God, because that is significant. So for instance, sometimes I'm very harsh with my kids, and I'm like yelling at them or whatever, and I'm like, whoa, like they might have done something naughty, but I'm obviously overreacting to it, and it's my words that clue me into the fact that my heart is not right in that. So I know I'm not talking about cussing yet. I'm going to get there, so don't worry, I'm going to get there, but I just wanted to give you guys a big picture. When we say, have you guys heard people call it swearing? Do people still say that, or is that my generation? Okay. It's like if you call it swearing or cussing or cursing, right? Any other words that people use to describe using bad language? Or are those the main
Foul
ones?
mouth.
Foul mouth, naughty words,
Profanity.
profanity. All right, those are all good things that people use to describe this. But I want to show you guys a difference. When the Bible talks about cursing, it's actually talking about it a little differently than using curse words. Okay, so when the Bible talks about cursing, it's the opposite of blessing. So if I were to be like, "I bless you, my child," right? That's like wanting good things for them and asking God to do good things for them. Cursing is the opposite of that. It's saying like if people say go to hell, like if you think about what those words mean, like may you be cursed forever. Like it's basically what it's saying. So think about that as far as when the Bible's talking about cursing, it's not talking about specific words in the language. Obviously, they had a different language. They used different words that were vulgar than we do in English, right? But when it talks about cursing, it's talking about the opposite of blessing. Does that make sense? This next verse, I'd love someone to read James 3:9-10. Go ahead.
Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them.
Okay, that's perfect. Romans 12:14 is bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. So it's talking about how we're supposed to interact even with people who are being mean to us. All right, who wants to read this next one? Mariana.
With the tongue we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth came blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so.
Okay, it's saying that it doesn't fit for us to like praise God with our same mouth. That's saying curses be upon you, right? In whatever language you would use to curse somebody. So again, this is bringing it back to the heart. A lot of times we want to make rules that are only about the surface of things. So for instance, like don't have sex before you're married is like a surface thing, right? There are a lot of things you can do wrong sexually without actually having sex with somebody. But the same thing goes for language. A lot of times we want to make it be like, if you don't use these words, then you're good to go. And that's actually not true. There's a lot of words that we can use that are have problems with them. Even if you don't use curse words, you could curse somebody. Okay? So again, just want to give you guys a little bit more of the big picture. All right, but the Bible does give us a few things that you should avoid. And it just says, don't do these things. So it says you should not have crude joking or obscene talk. So that's very general. It doesn't specifically say, don't tell your mama jokes. It doesn't say that. It just says, avoid crude joking. It's not okay for Christians. It's a bad witness for you, and it brings your mind to bad places. It brings other people's minds to bad places. I know for a while when I was in college, the trend or like the kind of thing that everyone was doing was, that's what she said. Have you guys heard that one? You would just like say anything. You would say anything that's like not sexually oriented. If you would be like, that's what she said, that means like take that sexually, ha ha ha. And it's like, just brings your mind to there all the time when you're talking about like normal things. And then they were like, take that sexually. And that honestly, I would say is crude joking because it brings your mind to places where your mind probably should not be going all the time. So it doesn't, so in Ephesians 5:4, it says, let there be no filthiness or foolish talk or crude joking. They're out of place. Instead, there should be thanksgiving. So your words are going to direct your mind in a lot of ways. So don't talk about things that are going to bring your mind down. That's kind of what it's saying. So don't do that. All right, now we talked about swearing. And people use that word as like saying profanities. But in the Bible, when it talks about swearing, it's actually about making promises with an oath. So people used to make, like, if I was going to tell you, like, oh yeah, we have this business deal going on, I'm totally going to hold up my end of the deal. You'd be like, I swear I'm going to hold up the end of my deal. In fact, I swear on this really important thing in my life. Like, I swear on my, people you might have heard, like, on my mother's grave, or like, but they would do it about even like the temple, which was a very holy place. They would say, I swear on the temple, or I swear on the altar, or that kind of thing. And Jesus said, don't do that. He says, so that's kind of the word, when you see swear in the Bible, that's what it's talking about. It's talking about making promises to other people. And Jesus says, you heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but you shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. So basically, keep your promises. I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's the throne of God, or by the earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair black or white. Let what you say simply be yes or no. Anything more than this comes from people. So again, if you read in the Bible and you come across the like word swear, it's usually talking about making promises. And Jesus says, just be an honest person and say yes or no. You don't need to like layer your words onto things to try to make them extra serious. Does that make sense? You guys good?
Yes.
All right. So kind of like we talked about, God is more concerned with your whole self than just like your surface, like how you look on the outside or how your speech looks on the outside. So if you are a bitter, horribly bitter person and angry inside, guess what? Even if you never cuss, that's a problem for God because you got this horrible anger and bitterness in your heart and you have not given that up to God to let him heal you and help you forgive, right? These are just some verses that talk about how language is one part of it, but it's really your whole self that needs to come in alignment with God. So Colossians 3:5-8. Someone read that for me? Go ahead, Ariana.
Put to death, therefore, what is early in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and
covetousness.
Covetousness, which is idolatry. Sorry.
No, thank you. You're doing the hard ones.
On account of these, the wrath of God is coming. In these you too once walked when you were living in them. But now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth.
All right, thank you. That was a hard one. Thank you for reading it for us. All right, so a few of these have to do with words. That's what slander is. Anybody want to define slander for us?
Tearing someone down.
Yeah?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Anyone have a different version of slander?
It's also like deceitful, right? It's like
Yeah,
it's
it can be
spreading like
deceitful.
false rumors.
Be like, so guys, do you hear what Ben did? And it's like spreading things to like bring his reputation down, right? Yeah, and a lot of times it has to do with lying. Yeah, Nick, and then what's your name again?
Jaden.
Kate.
Like moving in the dark in the shadows.
Yeah, like secret plots and stuff. Hayden.
Like making fun of people.
Making fun of people, yeah, that can be it too, especially behind their back. Alright, who wants to read for us Ephesians 5:29-32?
Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you.
Thank you. Alright, this is actually my favorite verse of the ones that we are looking at for this answer to this question, because this gives you a picture of what you should be shooting for with your words. So building people up instead of tearing people down, kind of bringing kindness and tenderheartedness and forgiveness into the equation. And so it's not just about, again, the vocabulary that you choose to use, but it's like this wholehearted, like, make your talk positive for people. Use your words for good purpose for God's kingdom. That's basically where this is aiming. So, alright, so now we're done with all the verses. Thanks for being patient, listening to all those, but I know the person who asked wanted to know what the Bible says about cussing. And honestly, it doesn't say a ton about what words you are allowed to use or not use. But it does have a lot of guidelines about what kind of language we should use, and that language does matter, and that the way that we speak to each other matters. And I would say even the way you speak to yourself, if you're always like, oh, you're such an idiot, like that's actually not kind to yourself, right? So the words that we use even in our own heads does shape us, and it is important. Couple things. The person said, as long as it's not offending anybody, is it okay? I think that's good in a sense to have some audience awareness, right? You might not say the same things in front of your grandma, but you're going to say it in front of your best friend, right? There's like a little bit of differentiation with audience. You guys agree with that? Everyone speak a little bit differently in front of different audiences.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I would say there are sometimes in some situations in some relationships that encourage us to go down bad roads with our language. And we should be careful about our language regardless of whether we think our friends think it's okay or not. So you're a Christian. Who else is in the room every time you have a conversation with anyone ever? God is there, right? Yes, Jesus is with us, and he's not. So yeah, if you think about that, like he's part of your audience all the time, whether you're alone or whether with your best friend, or God listens to you and he cares about you and he hears all the words you ever say. And you're going to answer for them on Judgment Day. So I would just say, don't only base it off of whether your friends are like, oh, can't believe you said that word, right? That's not the only measure of morality in your life, I hope, because God is with you always. I would say I found for myself, there are certain ways that you can use words that for some people think are like really strong, and for you, you use them in a way that makes sense in your relationships and actually is helping build people up. So I was giving the example to Deanna earlier. I had an aunt, my aunt once told me, she was like, don't use the word sucks, that's vulgar, you shouldn't use the word sucks. And I know some people feel that way, and now I probably would never say that word to my aunt anymore after she told me that, right? But usually when I say the word sucks, I'm like, oh, Deanna, you had a hard week, it sucks for you, I'm so sorry, I'm empathizing with her, right? I'm not usually using it in the sense of like, you suck, right? So in some senses, you can evaluate the word, like how are you using it? Are you using it to help people? Are you using it to build people up? Versus are you using it to tear them down? And I think there are some words, if you guys look into the root of the word, you probably just never want to use that word because there's nothing good about it. So I'm not going to mention those here because we don't need to learn new words that we don't already know, and we don't already know them. But I will just say, think it's good to be aware of your audience. I think you have a bigger audience all the time. God is your audience, so keep that in mind. And then think about how you're using your words in the bigger picture. So are you building people up with your words? Are you giving into your anger? Or giving into your kind of stirring the pot with your words? Even if you're not using vulgar words, are you having a vulgar heart? Is kind of my question for you. So I hope that answers. But does anyone have any questions about cussing? You guys good? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. So, anyways, I'm going to skip the second one, and we're going to go to the third one because I think yes, because the second one was one that I was worried about being too long, anyways, and we're a little bit going a little bit late, probably because I did the game too long. So, with that, I'm just going to answer: do the Nephilim exist, and what are they? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Nephilim at all, ever. Okay, fun. Okay, I had to write like a 15-page essay on this at one point, and so yeah, that was super fun, and it was all like in Hebrew and stuff. So, anyways, we're about the Hebrew of this passage. So, if you guys know, what does the word Nephilim mean? That's actually the hardest part of this, because the question is, do they exist? The answer is yes. The Bible talks about them like 2 or 3 times. What are they? Yes. And the difficult part of this is that the Nephilim, they first come up in Genesis 6. And the next time they come up is when talking about the soldiers in Jericho. Those are the 2 big times. I think there's like one other time, I think Goliath is called a Nephilim, and that's about it. Okay? So the problem with the word is that if you guys know Jewish history at all, if you've read like the Old Testament, you know that at one point the Jews, all of them, like the northern kingdom got taken to Assyria, they never came back. But the southern kingdom, Judah and Benjamin, they got exiled to Babylon. They all got taken, they all left Israel, and they went to Babylon. And in Babylon, they were there for long enough that they all forgot Hebrew. And no one knew how to read it. And they all knew Aramaic, which is actually what Jesus would have spoken the most of all the way to when Jesus was there. So when they came back to the land after their exile to Babylon, they had to reteach themselves Hebrew. But they only had 2 or 3 instances of the word Nephilim. And so they never really even figured it out again. And this is weird because for the words in the Old Testament, we are like 100% sure about 99.9% of them. And this is in the 0.1% that there's a giant disagreement about. And the disagreement stems from basically an argument of if it means giant or if it means half angel, half person, which is a really big difference, right? Okay, so if it, and one of the things that comes from this is that if you look pre-exile, when the Jews were still in Israel, before they went to Babylon, they didn't have a lot of angelology. They didn't really like talk about the angels very much. As you like read the Old Testament, it'll be like, and there was an angel, and then like it just keeps going. Or it'll be like, and there was a person, and like you think it's an angel, but it doesn't really say it's an angel. Like it's like, is it maybe like, and that happens. And there's not really much like mythology of angels. When they come back from Babylon, Babylon was obsessed with angels. They have like manuscripts and pages and pages and pages. They have a book that's 105 chapters all about angelology. Ooh. And that's kind of from some of the Babylonian stuff mixing with the Jewish idea of angels. Yes? How thick is the book? It's like, it's about as thick as the book of Psalms in the Bible. When I say chapters, I mean like Bible chapters. Oh, so okay. it's a book like, it's probably about as big as the book of Psalms. Anyways, so with that, they came back and they had like all this angel stuff, and so when they relearned Hebrew, the Jews thought that Nephilim meant half person, half angel. Okay? So we're going to go to the main part that this is talked about, which is in Genesis 1 through 6. Genesis 1 through 6, if you guys know the story of Genesis, they're in the garden. They sit in the garden. They get kicked out of the garden. They have Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. Cain gets exiled. And then Seth is like the 3rd child. And Seth, actually chapter 5 is just like literally a list of all of Seth's kids.
Yes.
Okay? And then we get to Genesis 6. And Genesis 6 says, human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, and for they are mortal, their days will be 120 years. Okay, important thing, sons of God is also a weird term. Some biblical writers say sons of God to mean angels, like in Job, sons of God means angels. Sometimes it means people who are in good relationship with God but are humans. Okay? So there's a disagreement partly about what it means here. We know in most cases, like in Job, we know it means angels. We don't know what it means here, but in some other places they talk about like David being a son of God, and he's a person, not an angel, right? Okay, there he goes. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, the men of renown. Basically saying, this version, we're going to talk about versions in a second, but this version, this is the NIV, is saying, half angel, half people, Nephilim. The sons of God would say angels went to the daughters of man, so humans, and they had children, so they had Nephilim, half angel, half human. Okay? Now, keeping going, what's important about this is all part of the flood story. Okay, so then it goes, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of human race was, and race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Okay, so saying, because of the things that's going on, because of all the evil, we have the flood. Noah found favor. Okay, now, this is the interesting part. So we have the NIV, which we just read. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of the humans, had children by them, they were the heroes of old and men of renown. The NKJV, you use the NKJV, right? Okay, they translate it differently. They say, there were giants. Giants is the word Nephilim. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God, the people who translate the NKJV, they say that the sons of God are the lineage of Seth from chapter 5. It's saying the people in good relationship with God, not angels. So the NKJV says sons of God means the people of like Seth's line, the non-sinful line, came into the daughters of men, meaning other people that aren't in good relationship with God. So we have good relationship with God people and people out of relationship with God. They have children. And they bore children, they were mighty men, men of old, men of renown. Okay? Do you guys understand the disagreement about what Nephilim are? Hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying not to be too up here. Does that make sense? Why the disagreement exists? Okay, so it's actually completely fine to agree with either. And actually one of the small group questions is like, does this actually matter? And my answer is not that much. But there's a question, I think it's kind of fun. Actually, one of my teachers, Dr. Tafalowski, he at one point was, at the first day of class I had with him in an intro class, he was like, so this is the problem, guys. When you get your master's degree, and then if you ever go on to get a doctorate, but also with a master's, what'll happen is you'll have a master's in a very specific thing. His master's is in Nazi theology. Okay? Oh, so that's his master's. And he was like, and then you go to a family reunion, and your uncle comes up to you, and he goes, what are the Nephilim? And then my response is, I don't know. Because there's a big argument about it, and no one in scholarship actually cares that much to do a ton of research into it because it doesn't actually affect that much. Right? Does that make sense and kind of weird? Yeah. Anyways, but with that, it is completely fine to believe that Nephilim are half angel, half people. There are lots of people who believe that. There were lots of Jews before Christ who believed that. It's also completely fine to believe that there are giants. Have you ever heard like the term like giants among men? Yes. That's what this is getting at. That's what the NKJV thinks is happening. It's like the super big, awesome people, the kings, the giants of men. It's completely fine to believe that the Nephilim are just really famous people who are probably really good warriors. Okay? Now, the one I agree with is the second one. It's okay to agree with either. The reason I agree with the second one is actually back to Genesis 5 through 8. Because the flood happens because of the evils of humans. And if the flood is happening from the evils of humans, then why is the story about half angel, half people there? Doesn't make any sense. That makes sense? If the evils are happening because of half angel, half people, why would God wipe out all the people? The problem is the people, so God stops the people. If it was actually half angel, half people, in my opinion, God would have just wiped out those people and not everyone else. Does that make sense? That's why I come to the conclusion that I think it's talking about giants of men and not half angel, half people. But it's okay if you agree with either. Are there any follow-up questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think you read a verse that said they married.
Yes.
So like angels don't get married.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Or is being married? I mean, I know it's a little bit different Genesis than it is today.
Yeah, so it would. I think that the idea that it's getting at is more of like they took them as partners. Okay. Yes, I don't think they probably used the word married. I could go and look at the actual words, but yeah, I think that's a good. Kaden?
We talked. Short answer. What was the question again?
The question was, do the Nephilim exist? What are they? The answer is, yes, they exist. They are either half angel, half people, or they are just giants of men. You can believe either. Personally, I believe they're giants of men.
Question answered.
What?
Question answered. Second question.
Yes. What's the second question? What's the second? What are they?
Oh, can you use the second question?
What do you mean?
Why all your second?
Why all the confusion? Yeah, so all the confusion is because we don't actually know what the word is translated as. So we have to use our context clues to figure it out. That's why there's confusion. It's because it's one of three Hebrew words we don't actually know what it means. Yes?
We just ask people who read Hebrew and speak it.
Yeah, so the problem is that there was a period of time when we were whole Babylonian exile where no one on the entire planet spoke Hebrew. And the whole Jewish people had to relearn Hebrew from scratch, and they never figured out what this word meant because it was only used 3 times. So they came back and they were like, what does this mean? And then they used context clues and kind of their time in Babylon, and they came up with half angel, half people. But, yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions about that? I know it's kind of a up here topic. Cool. Awesome. We're going to go to small groups. Small group leaders ignore questions 3 and 4.
Are you still allowed to ask questions?
You can, yeah. No,